All right, we're going to quickly go through the key things we need to know about Mishnah Brachot, the one that you worked on in class. First of all, you should have noticed the parallels within each statement. Tfilat hashachar ad chatzot. So first, Tfilat hashachar, what we call shacharit, but remember that tfilah here means the amidah. So the morning amidah, as opposed to Shema, which has its own set of rules. So the morning tefillah, ad chatzot. You're missing the verb there. The verb, when you're missing the verb, it usually is, right? Is until noon, right? Noon in rabbinic kind of hour talk means 6 hours because they were counting 12 hours from sunrise to sunset. So halfway, 6 hours. Okay? That'll just help it fit into the context of the rest of the Mishnah. And when it says is 6 hours, that could mean, like in some cases, such and such is done continuously until such a time. Obviously, that's not what it means here. Obviously, here by logic, you should figure it out that it means can be said up until noon, any time until noon. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ad arba sha'ot. He doesn't give you the whole sentence. He just tells you where he disagrees. Ad chatzot. He says ad arba sha'ot. Since chatzot, you know, is 6 hours. This is 4 hours. This is just a little bit earlier. Okay, so that's our first rule. We have a statement that's anonymous, means doesn't have a name attached. We call that the Tana Kama. An important term, Tana Kama. Okay, but it just means the anonymous first opinion. Tfilah Shachar Chatzot is the Tana Kama. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. He says, no, Tfilah Shachar can be said only until 4 hours, not 6. Same deal with Tfilat HaMincha, which you know is afternoon, Ad Ha'erev, which until the evening, which we should understand to mean until the beginning of Erev, or sunset, meaning until the very end of daylight. Again, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. He doesn't repeat this part. We understand that. Ad Plag HaMincha. The most important thing is to recognize with each of these that Rabbi Yehuda's statement ends after those 3 words, so that when after Ad Arba Sha'ot we go to Tfilat HaMincha, you don't read that as one continuous sentence, because you see Tfilat HaMincha is the next topic, the next piece. Rabbi Yehuda ends here, and we move on. Now, that's the structure of each of these lines. Tanakama gives us one time. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees and gives us a different time. So the morning tefillah until 6 hours. Rabbi Yehuda says until 4. Afternoon tefillah mincha until evening, beginning of evening. Rabbi Yehuda plaga mincha, a little bit before evening. We'll call it mid-afternoon. The last of the 4 statements has the same basic structure. B'shel musafin kol hayom, Rabbi Yehuda omer ad sheva sha'ot, with the one exception that people noted that here, kol hayom, all day, seems to give both a beginning time and an ending time. This is true. Does that make it different? Not really. The reason is because Musaf can be said from any time from the beginning of the day. So since it, like Mincha, has the rule of until evening, but unlike Mincha, it's not from sometime middle of the day until evening, it's from morning till evening, it's just easier to say all day. But the real concern, since Rabbi Yehuda is disagreeing about the end time, is still the end time. So it's not an exception in that sense, even though it a little bit looks like one. Now here's our whole Mishnah. Notice the very parallel structure of 3 of the 4 statements. And then notice the difference with this one. Right? Tanakama Rabbi Yehuda, Tanakama Rabbi Yehuda, Tanakama Rabbi Yehuda, all telling us about precise end times. And then this one, which doesn't look at all the same. So what about that one? What are the key differences? One, there's no machloket. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't show up. And two, it doesn't say a time. Ein la keva. It has no fixed time. If they meant, you can say it all night, they could have said kol halayla, just like they said kol hayom for Musa. They don't. Ein la keva. It's very odd and it doesn't fit in. So we don't know yet why it doesn't fit in, but we need to notice it so that when we so that we're on the lookout for explanations. Okay, that's it for the Mishnah. Now I'm shifting focus to the passage from Bamidbar that I asked you to look at. Okay, so you want to look it back over quickly to make sure you've got it. You know what's in there. That's fine. These are the. I'm going to go through the Hebrew that is important for you to know and be aware of. First of all, you need to know the term ula tamid. The word tamid can mean always or regular. Now, in this case, tamid means every day. We will see the word tamid used in a few different senses, but always some form of regular, always. Remember, we saw in Daniel the word normally. Olah is a type of korban or sacrifice. Korban is the general word for sacrifice. There are numbers of different types of korbanot that were differentiated, one by the reason that they were given or the occasion, but more broadly, there are different categories based on how the rules for how they were offered. An olah is what's called a burnt offering, an offering that was completely sort of burnt on the altar. There was none of the meat was saved for eating, as was the case with others. So the olah tamid or olat tamid is the daily offering. Okay. Now, in this passage from Bamidbar, the one that we read on Rosh Chodesh, notice we read it on Rosh Chodesh because the next section talks about the special offering for Rosh Chodesh, but the passage starts with the Olah Tamid. Shnaim Layom Olah Tamid. It's not only daily, but two a day. Okay, so we know there's a daily offering, it's twice a day. This is not something that every individual Israelite would bring. It is one offering by the priests in the temple on behalf of the whole nation. The people are not there, they're all at home. In the temple, we're doing this on their behalf. Okay. So what do we know about this? So the first important thing about this is, et hakeves echad, keves lamb, one of the lambs, taseh haboker, in the morning, et hakeves sheni, the second, taseh bein ha'arbaim. Bein ha'arbaim is a weird phrase. In the translation you have, it's translated as twilight, but we're going to call it late afternoon because once it gets dark, you can't do sacrifices anymore. There are no sacrifices after dark ever because you can't see, and trying to slaughter a large animal with a very, very sharp and large knife in the pitch dark is not a safe proposition. So no sacrifices after dark in the temple ever. So the Shnaim Layom Olah Tamid was one Baboker, one Bein Ha'arbayim. Okay? Now, the next important little detail is, later on it says, at Hakevas Hasheni, the second one, Taseh Bein Ha'arbayim, you do in the afternoon, in the late afternoon, Kemin Chatabo Charuch Nisko. Just like the morning offering and its pouring, it's sort of pouring the water, whatever. The point being that it tells us some rules for the morning tamid, and then it says the afternoon tamid should be done exactly like the morning tamid. So we know that there's a daily tamid offering. We know that olat tamid is shnaim layom. There's 2 per day. The times are boker and bein ha'arbaim, morning and late afternoon, and that the afternoon one is ke min boker. It is like, in this case, meaning exactly the same, done exactly the same way as the morning. Last thing, the last 2 verses. There's a special Shabbat offering. What is in the Shabbat offering? Not so important. What is important to me is Olat Shabbat b'Shabbato. You do this special Shabbat offering every Shabbat. Shabbat b'Shabbato. You eat Shabbat. Al Olat HaTamid v'Niska. Al on. It doesn't mean like literally like you pile them. It means on top of, above and beyond, in addition to the Olat Tamid. And this is repeated the rest of this chapter and the next. After we've talked about the Shabbat offering, we then go to the Rosh Chodesh offering, which is why it's the Rosh Chodesh Torah. And we go to the Pesach offering and the special Shavuot offering and the Rosh Hashanah offering and the Yom Kippur offering, etc. Each one, the Torah is very explicit in saying this is al on top of, in addition to the Olat HaTamid. The Olat HaTamid is never replaced, it's only added to. Now, the word for to add in Hebrew is mosif. So, these offerings that are added on top of the Tamid on Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, holidays, is musaf, is added to the ones that are Tamid. Okay. Now, I want you to look at the questions and see if you can figure out the connection between what we see in Bamidbar and what we saw in the Mishnah itself.